Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. Word. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Paul. I'm so excited that you agreed to come and have a conversation with me on Blue Glasses Math. So thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Paul, you're a high school teacher, right? High school math.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what I always start every episode, first of all, I just love talking with teachers who teach math, and teachers like you. We met recently at a conference, and I was really inspired by you and by your conversation and how you seem to relate to your students based on the way you present yourself. And so I always like to ask my guests, what is your math story? Like, what is it that brought you to this space? And just, whatever comes to mind, and anywhere from your pre-K early years all the way through college or whatever you want to share with us. What is your math story?
I mean, I think it's funny because I was like an average math kid in high school. And I know now, looking back, that probably more because I wanted to be than maybe I could have been, So I was totally content with, I loved math anyway. So, but I was content with getting like the B or the A that I didn't have to work for, kind of thing, And actually people are surprised to find out that like I didn't even take an AP math class in high school. I took no AP classes in high school. And part of it was not knowing, to be quite honest with you. And now I understand that, like when we talk about access and stuff like that, there was access, but I didn't know. And I think part of that is probably with the tracking, right? Like if you trace that all the way back into the 90s when I was in high school, and it's like, well, I was probably tracked not to take AP, but yeah, here I did loved math.
Yeah.
I probably would have taken it, and if I had access to it, right, and known about it. I mean, I went all the way up to trig, or what we might call pre-calc now, but yeah. So, I mean, I was good at it in, elementary school, middle school. I liked it. I had the brain for it, I guess. Numbers always interested me, and mental math was always easy for me, and I liked challenging myself with that. But once I got to college and, had to start to take what we would all see as like, really high level math classes, mainly because I went in as an actuarial science major. So I had to take, and a lot of people don't understand what that is. So yeah, an actuary, a lot of times the moniker an actuary gets is a financial engineer. And so if you take those two words, right? Yeah, I had to take all of like high level business classes that you might take if you're a finance major. So insurance, pensions, economics, like accounting, you name it, right? And on the math side of it, I had to take pretty much all the math you had to take in your intro to engineering courses, even though I was never going to be an engineer. So all the way up to like differential equations, calc 3, matrices, like you name it. So you're balancing that, and it's very unique because the math you need at that level, you do actually transfer and use in the actuarial field. You do use integrals, you use, differential equations, all that kind of stuff. So probability, like calculus with statistics meshed together, right? So that's what I got to in college and still loved it. So even the grind of it.
Okay. So you were still okay with that grind.
Okay. But I was like getting 100 on everything, but I like the challenge of it, and the stories are good too. Like when you can tell people about like the final exam that was like one problem, 2 hours long kind of stuff, there's a level of grit and perseverance that you do get there that I think that grit's a very popular buzzword, but like, I think, people don't realize what that really takes and looks like,
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful to have been in that role and that experience, because had I just continued to take the easy way or, like whatever that might be, like for a typical business major, right? If I just stopped at business calculus, I would not have been challenged as much in that regard, So that's 75% of the math story. But I did go to work in that field and, for a little bit in Washington, D.C., and then realized that it was not for me, only because of the grind of the workday. That you can go two paths with that field. You can work for an insurance company, where the emphasis is placed on passing actuarial exams, getting your certification, and then eventually, those are the people who actually wind up being like CFOs and stuff, because they have such an inner working of like everything. or I chose to work for the consulting side of it, retirement consulting, because I was like that part of it too. That was to me more businessy, 401ks, 403bs, pension plans. Like I like that, But the trade-off is that when you work for an insurance company, you work the typical 8 to 4, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And when you work for the retirement consulting, you work for the client. So if the client needs something at 5 o'clock and you're ready to go home, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
So even at a young age, I realized real quick, you know what? It's not that I don't like doing this. Like 17 hours, 18 hours days, like that's not going to be for me.
Not sustainable. No. Yeah. So interesting. So I think it's interesting that your path took you from sort of like the average student, in high school, middle school, high school, as you describe, to like you just took off into college. And what do you think it was that like motivated you to, or that made you, that motivated you to go to that next level instead of staying on the more average path, as you kind of described?
That's a really good question, which I don't get asked a lot. I think I somehow was perceptive enough to realize that just my life in general up to that point was very average. Like my family life was great. Like I had nothing to complain about. It was very, I would say, privileged in that regard. Like didn't have to worry about anything. Wasn't challenged in school as much as, I mean,
yeah.
My dad was a teacher in the district. So like he would know before I would know if something was wrong kind of thing. Like he got the phone call before I got home.
Yeah.
So like, I think that I was starting to understand, I guess maybe in college, that everything that I had done to that point was just average, and like everybody could do average,
Yeah.
So even when I was working in DC, it was pretty much kind of like, is this it? Like, is this the deal? Is this how I'm going to make an impact? Because if this is it, I don't really see how that's shaking out, if that makes sense,
Yeah, I'm writing down the word self-reflection. It seems like you're a very self-reflective kind of individual.
I'm super introverted, which is funny, and I only learned recently that what that means, like that means that it doesn't mean that you never want to be around people, which is obviously the case because I'm in a classroom all day, right? But what it really means is that in times of either crisis or reflection, right, you actually prefer to be alone.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, which when I learned that, I was like, well, that is me then. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a total introvert. Somebody's called me an extroverted introvert. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're an introvert, but you have a podcast. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. Right. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about now. So now you're a teacher, and what do you teach? You teach high school math. What specifically?
I do. Yeah. So typically, I mean, I've pretty much taught it all. Like right now I have a couple of Algebra 2 data science classes and pre-calculus and AP calculus. So
awesome. Awesome. All right. So tell me about your classroom. So in your classroom, looking on your website, because I did my homework, and on your website, I read where it says, keep it real and keep it relevant. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that, and the reason why I asked this question is because when I'm picturing you in your college classes, taking all those business math classes and all of the pure math classes, I'm thinking, how many times, maybe in the business class, it could be real and relevant, but in the pure math class, sometimes at college, it could be very much more abstract. And I'm just kind of curious about how you keep it real and relevant for your students to keep them engaged.
Yeah. Just philosophically, it is like just the challenge that I put on myself to like basically take a step back and look at whatever we're going to be talking about in this lesson, unit, whatever it might be. Let's take a treetop version, right? So if I look at a unit, the first question I ask myself is, let's look at what I've done in the past. What do I like? What do I not like? Does it fit this group? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Which doesn't mean like, oh, well, this group can't do this. So that's not what it means. What it means is the material I used last time, is it outdated? Is it no longer relevant? Is there something better, that this group responds to? So if I have a group that is more into, let's just say sports or whatever, but the last time I did this concept, I was talking about environmental science, it might not resonate with them, right? So the approach that I think I would say I pride myself on is not just recycling all the time, but there's a little bit, of course, right? Yeah. But it's tailored. It's really more tailored, right? So I want the user experience to be such that like it's intriguing to them in the moment at this time, right? Like I think it's so funny when we see problems, especially in textbooks, when you see people like write like compact discs or something like that,
Yeah.
like, so like if you're not talking about streaming right now, then what are you like? I don't know why are
Right.
you talking about that? So yeah, so that would be more of like the overarching idea. But when the reason behind it, I guess, is because I felt when I began my teaching career, and even when I was in college, like actually do some tutoring um, for some athletes. I actually worked for like the academic support
Yeah.
department of the college, right? And so my job was to tutor student athletes, right, during study hall hours and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I would start to learn like the reason that they're struggling is because they don't understand why they're doing this. And the
Yes.
reason they don't understand that is because they don't see how it's relevant to anything that they've ever experienced in their life. So immediately in those moments, I was training, I didn't realize it, but like I was learning how to make analogies and right,
Make
make
analogies. Yeah.
metaphors. Yeah, to say like, oh, well, all right, well, just imagine this, like if simple stuff. If
Yeah.
you were shopping or whatever it might be, and then that translated into like when I see a chart or a graph or an article or whatever it might be, like what about that can we now infuse into what we're talking about,
Yeah.
um, and just go from there.
Love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Something I've been tossing around, and I actually was doing something for my website this morning. I had to create a landing page video, and I was really talking about like who do we need to be as math teachers, right? Who do we need to be? It's like we so often think about like the assignments that students are doing, and so you have that, but then it's like who do you need to be to recognize what your students are even interested in? I mean,
Yeah.
that in itself
Yeah.
is sometimes could be mind blowing to some people, that, oh, if it's relevant to my students, then they will engage in a different way. And I love what you were saying about the student athletes, because it's like, it's not because they couldn't do the math. It's because they didn't find meaning in it.
Mhm.
And so you recognize that, and
It's
I love that.
that's the way we've always done it, right? Like that's what they've been subject to, right? Like I've just
So
gotten
true.
the last 5 years of my life, I've gotten a worksheet, so I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this.
Right, exactly. I love it. Awesome. Um, so I'm going to wrap up this conversation by asking you. You used the word treetop. Actually, I wrote that down on my page. Tell me what you mean by treetop view of that.
Yeah, I think when I begin the year, like the summer for me, which I try to communicate to teachers all the time. Like, of course, you need that downtime, but I feel
Yeah.
like what people don't want to admit is that the tail end of the summer, right? And I'm not talking about the last 3 days before you go into school. I'm talking about like for me, just talking about me. For me, like after a couple weeks, the wheels start turning, right?
Yeah.
So what does next year look like? How do I want that to play off? Like, how do I want to motivate the first couple days, right? And so I'm kind of, what have I done? What's worked? What hasn't worked? But like the very first thing I think about is like, okay, how do we start fast and start strong with a lot of momentum and engagement and excitement? And then how do we sustain that, right? And the only way to do that is if I take a holistic look at like, all right, how's the year going to play out? What did I not like?
Yeah.
What needs to be changed? What can we swap this out for that? And not just an activity, but like, does this lesson even, do we need this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say that that's where I do have a lot of latitude, and my department, supervisors have always been amazing at just letting me kind of like, I mean, I run it by them, but like, here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
What do you think? That kind of stuff, having that conversation so that when I go in, like I basically in my head want September, like planned out roughly,
Yeah.
right? Like very similar to what a coach might do, a football coach, when they script their plays, like
Yes.
I want a loose script of how this is going to look. Now I know, and we all know, anybody who's been teaching know that the probability of any, like all of that script happening is like nothing, you know, but I don't mind that. What I do know is that there's a lot of things that I can control
Yeah.
early on, right? That's, like there's first couple days you don't have the field trips. You don't have
Yes. You're right.
you may have the fire drill right away just to set the tone, but like, you don't have a lot of craziness. You don't have the holiday breaks. You don't have any of that.
Right.
So you could take advantage of the momentum to really say like script out, like, and I say the first month, but let's be honest, it's probably the first like 5 to 7 classes,
Yeah.
and say, hey, by the time we get to mid-September or like late September, like we know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think when you're saying we know what we're doing, I think I hear you saying that. And the way I interpret it is like the tone is being set.
Yeah, the standards are being set,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody in the class knows, and I know what's expected. And it's
Yeah.
not like you're, again, not from a typical rules and policies standpoint. Is,
Yeah.
one of the things I talked about at the conference, right, is that, well, the other thing that I try to communicate really hard is, they should expect this to be a different experience than they've had in the past, and that's not me throwing shade at anybody. That's just the way I know. There's a lot about me that is different. So, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to come in hot with some energy, and I'm probably not going to let up, and I'm going to be demanding, and I'm probably not going to let up unless I really feel we need to. Like, I'm going to pick my spots. But then the other thing is, I want them to know, like, the support that they're going to receive from me in believing in them
Yes.
is paramount to what we do. Like, we're actually going to have in a couple days, one of my classes is going to fill out like a check-in, and this one's going to be like very, let's say, personal. And they may not share a lot with me anyway, but I want them to continue to know here in December, right? Like, no, I still want to know where you're at right now.
So you're checking in with them, or
In
or
life.
in life. Ah,
Yeah, like, I want to
nice.
know, like, what are things like. We all assume, like, again, we're having this and it's like near the holidays, right? Like, I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
an
yeah.
assumption that everybody loves the holidays, and that's not true. Like, sometimes it's hard for people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you never know where they are, right? So, I'm trying to tell them in September that this is who I am, but then I'm trying to back it up as we go through the year. Like, this is not an idea. This is not something I'm saying to sound good in September. This is something that I fully intend on following through on
Yeah.
as we go through the year, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally makes sense. I mean, I think the whole idea is you're just like staying in touch with who your students
For sure.
are and who they need you to be
Yeah.
as their teacher and what kind of support they need. And just, the last thing you were saying about like setting the tone in the beginning of the year, fully hear what you're saying. It's not about like, these are the rules written on the side of the poster on the side
Yeah.
of the whiteboard. It's more of like these are the expectations and not expectations in like your behavior. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right.
No, no,
Expectations
right.
on level, then like the level of thinking,
Yeah.
right? The level of engagement, the level of what your expectations are of them because you believe in them. That's where
Well,
it's
and
full
level of
circle.
confidence, right?
The
Like, and
level of
that's
confidence, yeah.
yeah. Some of my classes where students struggle with because they don't, like you said at the beginning, right? Like, they don't have the confidence that they can be good
Yeah,
at math, right?
yeah,
And they see, and they've now learned, right? This is also a learned behavior. They've learned to associate good at math with like 90 or above, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, I'm trying to change that narrative, right? So I'm
Yes.
trying to get them to understand that, like, you're perfect the way you are, and we'll go with there.
Mm,
Bye. So does
I
that make
love
sense?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love what you just said. You're perfect the way you are,
Yeah.
which is so funny because my daughter just walked in from her first semester of college. Hi, Lucy. So it's going to be on the podcast. But it's as your student is handing in her test, right?
Yeah.
And this is like real life, right? But yeah. So thank you so much for this conversation. I think it'll give some nice value to the teachers and other audience people who are listening. Sorry, I got a little distracted
No,
seeing my
please.
my
This
college
is
student.
important. Now, if you want to get up and go give her a hug, this is your podcast. We're past hugs.
What? No, that's okay. It's okay
Guest
that you interrupt my
appearance. This
podcast.
is okay. Yeah.
You want to make a guest appearance? All right, here she does.
There we go.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome. Guest appearance. This is my daughter, Lucy.
Hi.
Hey, Lucy, how are you?
She's like,
Sorry.
It's awkward.
no, she can't hear you because I have my. She
Okay,
said,
cool.
"Hey, how are you? You are good. How are you?" She says. Awesome. I love it. Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm not gonna, keep you any longer, but I appreciate your. Well, I guess my last question for you would be, if you could give advice to a teacher who is stepping into the profession of teaching math, in like one sentence, brief sentence, what advice would you give to a new math teacher coming into the field?
The easiest way for them or you, right, to get as much out of this profession as it has to offer is to be willing to do what others are not willing to do.
Nice.
You're willing to just go above and beyond what others are willing to do I would say, especially in mathematics, right? And break the status quo. You will find that not only will you feel like every day is amazing when you come to school, but I think your students will show you that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great ending. Well, thanks so much, Paul. And if people wanted to like get in touch with you or follow you, what's the best way? And I'll put it in the show notes, but what's
Yeah.
the best way that people could connect
Yeah,
with
I
you?
mean, social media is usually some version of either Paul Battaglia or the Paul Battaglia. Website is thepaulbattaglia.com. So yeah, they can reach out to me anyway, email, social media, website, and
Awesome.
we could chat and connect for sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much and have a happy holiday. I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts and follow along on the conversation on Instagram. And remember, being a math person is all just a matter of perspective.